How to beat the Catalan is probably my most requested video, because the Catalan is just annoying, it's solid, and it's very hard to play against. So white opens up with d4, we respond with knight to f6, c4, g6, now knight to f3. If white plays like knight to c3 at some point instead of like g3, knight to f3, you will have to go back to like a Grunfeld or a King's Indian, because this weapon only works against the Catalan. So knight to f3, now we play bishop to g7. This is not your regular King's Indian defense. And after white plays pawn to g3, we will play pawn to c5. This move basically tries to undermine the center with a flank pawn and also opens up our queen. Here, white has a couple of options. To push, to take the pawn, or to play like bishop to g2 and ignore our offering. So first, the easiest, if white takes our pawn, which isn't a very good move, we will go queen to a5 check, immediately winning this pawn back. Here white should absolutely block with the bishop, where we will just capture on c5. In this position we achieved dominance over these dark squares and this diagonal. We have a very nice position, and we already took apart white's Catalan on like the 6th move of the opening. If white doesn't block with the bishop, and let's say they block with the knight instead, that is actually a pretty bad mistake. But it looks very natural, so people might play this a lot against you. You will play knight to e4, which in this opening, it's called the Pterodactyl Defense. This is a common idea, jumping the knight to e4 when the c3 knight is pinned to the king. Now we have just major pressure here, so if white just defends with the bishop, we will grab this pawn here, and now we will even triple their pawns. We will grab this pawn, and you will just win all of them slowly, because these pawns are just horribly weak and hard to defend. So taking as white isn't probably the best option. Now, white has two other options, to push the pawn or to play like bishop to g2. I think bishop to g2, from the perspective of the Catalan player, is probably the most natural move. Because if white has pushed the pawn, they're kinda closing up this long diagonal. And I don't think most Catalan players want that. So we will look at the pawn push variation in a bit, but first the main line, which is bishop to g2. And now we will play the move queen to a5 check. The most common response is knight to c3, where again we will just jump the knight into the center, opening up this bishop and teaming up on this diagonal. If white blocks with the bishop, we will just grab the bishop, and we got rid of our knight that was blocking our bishop for white's dark squared bishop. So now we have complete dominance over this diagonal. We will just develop our pieces, and from a human perspective I would say we are already a bit better. The computer gives this complete equality. The main line here goes queen to d3, and it's basically, I would say, the only good move, where here you will take the pawn on d4. If they take your knight, that's a horrible blunder, because you will just capture here, and you are already winning. If they just castle, you will just take on b2 with a fork, and probably make a new queen, or just this, and you're a piece up. So white can't take your seemingly hanging knight, because you have a much greater threat on c3. So white will take with the knight, and now we have to move this knight somewhere. So the best move is to move it to c5. Why not just take the knight here, and double their pawns like this? Well, in these positions, you don't wanna take the knight on c3 really often, because white has this nice defensive resource, which is bishop to d2. And after you move the queen, they will just capture here, and they will very nicely counteract your dark squared bishop. And that's not what we want. In the Pterodactyl Defense, we want to keep our bishop open. So after knight to c5, the line goes like queen to d1, and now we just develop your pieces. And both players have achieved something. Both players have these fianchettoed bishops which are putting pressure on the center. But I would say, black has basically already equalized. We have some very nice pressure on the diagonal, and it's not your regular Catalan, where white will just steamroll your center and just win. In this position, white doesn't have to block with the knight. They can block with the bishop or the queen. So if they just block with the queen, you will just grab the queen. If they take with the bishop, you will again jump the knight into the center, trying to grab this bishop. And if they block with the bishop right away, you will just drop the queen back to b6, where it has some nice pressure on these pawns. If they take, you will just win the pawn back, and you will just have a nice position, which is very easy to play. White doesn't have to play bishop to g2, and they can instead push the pawn, which I would say from white's perspective, on a human level, isn't the best move. Yes, it's taking space, but also it's closing up this diagonal for the bishop. So here, the plan is simple. You will play d6, you will castle, and now you want to try to play like a6, b5, or e6 and take. This is a similar position to the Benoni defense. It's probably called like a fianchetto Benoni defense, but it's not like your standard Benoni, which is sort of hard to play. I will link a video in the description from Volcus. He has a video on the Benoni defense, and you can apply the ideas from that video to this position. It's easy to play once you understand the basic ideas, and this position is just nice. White can also play g3 earlier. Let's say here. Already here they can play the move g3, and it's basically the same thing. You will again strike with c5. And here again, if white takes us, we will go queen to a5 check. If they push, we will just play d6 again. If they put the bishop here, we will just take, and then develop the knight with a tempo. And after bishop to g7, we already transposed into what we learned. The Pterodactyl defense against the Catalan is fairly easy to play. You absolutely need to memorize the main line. You need to memorize like the main line and a few ideas like queen to a5, knight to a4, and you will just be completely fine. It kinda takes the Catalan player out of their comfort zone, because in the Catalan, white is trying to pressure the center. But if we never put a pawn on d5, white kinda doesn't have anything to pressure in the center. And I like this approach by black very, very much. There were no videos for a couple of days because I was sick. I'm still kinda sick in the making of this video. But my next few video ideas are something with Stockfish and Leela, the chess bots, and maybe another part of overrated, underrated chess openings. Maybe I will just... Probably I will even make another video today and just put out 2. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know down in the comments what you want to see next. Bye.